It really pains me to make today's video, and that's because I really wanted to love the Intercontinental Da Nang Peninsula. If you do not know about this hotel is supposed to be one of the best hotels in all of Vietnam. But as you can probably tell from the title of this video, that was really not the experience. In this video, let's figure out why. We'll do our hotel review in our typical fashion using a 5-point framework, the same 5-point framework that we used to review the JW Marriott in Phuket. And if you haven't checked out that video, I'll link it up there. We'll review the amenities of the property, the room, the food, the hospitality, and the location. Rate each of those parameters on a scale of 5 and then come up with an average score. If you're new here, my name is Abhilash, this is Credit Debit with Abhi. And if you like this kind of content, hit the like and subscribe button below. And like we do in all of our videos, without further ado, let's dive in. And let's start with the amenities of the property. This property is entirely built on top of a hill and overlooks the ocean. And as soon as you reach the front of the property, you're greeted by a large, expansive lobby. Marble flooring, French colonial architecture, and the architect for this hotel is the same architect that built the JW Marriott Phuket. And this guy's name is Bill Bensley, and he's apparently a big deal. And the reason I point that out is some of the architectural elements that you see with the JW Marriott translate over here in terms of the French colonial architecture. But that's where the similarities end. This is a completely different property than the JW Marriott. The JW Marriott, like I said in my video, was kind of eclectic, whereas this property is built right in the middle of nature. There are 5 total restaurants at the property, a private beachfront, a separate area for the spa services with plenty of rooms. Do bear in mind that not all the rooms come with sauna and steam, so you probably have to buy a service that allows you to be in a room where you can get sauna and steam. Because of the size of the property and the elevation, you have to take a buggy pretty much anywhere you go. And if you really want to enjoy the views of the property, sit at the back of the buggy and enjoy the views of the forest and the ocean. I'm telling you, it's absolutely stunning. All the rooms of the property are divided into 4 levels: heaven, sky, earth, and sea. While the rooms themselves didn't look different, the nomenclature itself was interesting. Oh, one of the things I did miss out on is the view from the lobby. As you walk towards the end of the lobby, you get this expansive view out to the ocean as well as the forest area. And it's difficult to describe how beautiful this view is. There are plenty of monkeys within the territory of the hotel. The hotel also has a cable car sort of a setup, which takes you between these different levels. The only complaint I had with the amenities of the hotel was that it's not very accessible, especially the rooms. Depending on which room you're given, you might have to walk down 2 flights of stairs, and there are no elevators to take you up and down. I was traveling with my parents and both of them are senior citizens, and this accessibility issue became more evident because of that. However, the amenities of the hotel get a 5 out of 5. Which then brings us to the second parameter, which is the rooms. And this is the parameter where, in my opinion, the hotel does the best. Even the base level rooms are expansive. Really large and comfortable beds. Enough wardrobe space to fit a month's worth of clothing inside. They provide you unlimited water during your stay, which comes in really handy in a humid place. The coffee machine made really good espresso, and they also provided you slippers within the room for you to use them within the property. But the standout feature of these rooms were the balconies. These balconies were humongous, with ample seating space for everyone. And because we were traveling in a family of 4, this came in handy because we were in 2 separate rooms. But we could come together, sit in the balcony and have a cup of tea or coffee without ever worrying about the amount of space. The bathrooms too were exceptional. Double vanity, a bathtub, an excellent shower head. The water pressure from the shower head was exceptional. One of the best I've ever experienced in all the hotels I've stayed at. So, all in all, the rooms at the property also get a 5 out of 5. At this point, you might be wondering what is with the title of this video. Well, this parameter is where the problems start to surface. And I'm talking about the third parameter, which is the food at the property. Like I mentioned before, there are 5 restaurants at the property. The flagship restaurant at the property is La Maison, which is the only Michelin-starred restaurant in all of Vietnam. We didn't end up dining at this restaurant, so basically have no commentary on it. Then there's the restaurant which is right next to the lobby, which is called Citron, and this is where they serve their breakfast. And there are 2 distinct parts of the experience that I want to speak about. One is the food and the other is the hospitality, and we'll come to hospitality in the next parameter. But let's talk about the food. It took a little while for us to get seated, but once we were seated, we just took a look around and looked at the ratio of the number of people to the amount of space available for the food to be served and the number of people available to serve the food. And all of those ratios were messed up, which meant everything felt chaotic. Guests were bumping into each other in trying to pick up anything from the menu, and you couldn't find a single person in case you wanted to order something a la carte. And if the food was fantastic, that would have been some relief, but that wasn't the case either. Which then brings us to the next restaurant, which is Tingara, which was close to Citron. And Tingara is their flagship Japanese restaurant. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, and you can look this up online. The prices here matched prices in New York City, and in some cases I would argue they surpassed some of the restaurants in New York City. And the food, while good, wasn't anything spectacular, especially for the price that you were paying. We ordered a bento box on one of the days, and the bento box was fine, but nothing to rave home about. And then the beachfront had two other restaurants. One was called Barefoot and the other was called Long Bar. One of the evenings we ordered some coconut water and a sandwich at Long Bar, and it was pretty decent. And I really liked the decor within Long Bar. You had seating on the ground and you could look out onto the ocean. And right opposite Long Bar is Barefoot, which was their barbecue restaurant. One of the nights we dined here and the seafood barbecue was fantastic, so no complaints here. So as you can tell, the food at the property was a mixed bag. And what made it worse is the price. Remember, you're in Vietnam, where the cost of goods is pretty cheap when you compare it to any US city pretty much. However, when you're shelling out $100 for two people to eat food, you're expecting the quality of the food and the quality of the service to match up to that. And that pretty much never happened. The only saving grace for the food at the property was actually the in-room dining, believe it or not. So if you can, when you're at the property, order in as much as you can, or just step outside and go to the city center and you'll have plenty of options to eat good food. Overall, the food at the property gets a 2 out of 5. Which brings me to the fourth parameter and another sore subject, which is the hospitality and service at this property. Let me start with the rating here. The rating I would give for hospitality is 2 out of 5. Now let me explain why. Well, I have 3 broad reasons. Number 1 is the lack of attention to detail and the service and hospitality when you're charging $500 to $600 a night. Each of the restaurants that we dined at and just interaction with most of the staff members, it didn't feel like there was enough attention to detail. Service at the restaurants took very, very long. At these restaurants, when you're sitting down, you would expect someone to bring the menu within 10 minutes of being seated. That never happened. If you needed something and you flagged it to the staff, it almost felt like they didn't care, but they had to kind of act on it because the customer was asking for it. Overall, it just felt like service and hospitality wasn't a focus for the property. However, the second issue within service and hospitality is definitely a focus at the property, and that is the hotel's focus to make money off of everything. If you took a laundry bag to put your dirty clothes in, at checkout, they're going to ask you to pay for it. And having stayed at a lot of hotels, that's never been the norm, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. We went for spa on one of the days, and you would assume that if you're paying for the spa services, you get access to steam and sauna in a common area. Well, that's not the case either. You have to choose specific services, which are obviously more expensive, which allows you access to a room where you can get steam and sauna. It was small things like this that kept on interrupting the experience and enjoying everything this property had to offer. Which then brings me to the last point around the service and hospitality, and that's got to do with accessibility. I didn't ding the hotel a point in the amenities section, but I'm going to ding it in service and hospitality. Like if you're building a hotel on top of a mountain and you've considered that all kinds of people can come to the property, why hasn't there been special attention paid to accessibility? There are no elevators to take people up and down, so if, God forbid, if something happens at the property, you're going to have trouble if your room's located 2 floors below the main area. Now that I'm done with that rant, let me talk about the 5th parameter, which is the location of the property. Like I said right at the top, the property is located on top of a hill, so it has beautiful views, and it's pretty close to one of the pagodas, which is another name for a temple. And within an hour and a half, you can get to the Marble Mountains as well as Bana Hills. One of the things I highly recommend doing when you visit Bana Hills is to visit this bridge with a hand at the bottom of the bridge holding it together. It's a spectacle. And the way you get to that bridge is you take a cable car and it goes for about 15 minutes if I'm not mistaken. And the views out where you can see the entire forest station is wonderful. Unfortunately, we didn't end up going to the Hoi An market, so that was a miss. But overall, the location of the property gets a 4 out of 5. Which brings us to an average score of 3.6. And honestly, I think I'm being generous with my rating here. And that's why I believe that if you're traveling to Vietnam and you want to stay at a hotel that makes you feel special, take your money and put it elsewhere. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.